Well, hello there. We are going to be painting Plus Model's Soviet Earthmover-Belorus in 1:35 scale. We start with live color UA701 as a base. We add several rust colors from Vallejo, Live Color and AK, ranging from dark rust to red and from light to dark. All those colors are applied with the sponge technique, which is ideally suited for the weathering effects we try to achieve here. Just watch closely. The technique itself is not very difficult at all. You just need a little bit practice and some try and error. It takes time until you found the right size of your sponge and which color you use and how much paint you need to remove before applying it to the model. Just keep trying until you're satisfied. We are now beginning with the dark shadow and added some yellow to it. We advanced a bit and mixed dark shadow flash and deep yellow to lighten up the red color. We apply that mix on the most exposed areas, but we don't forget the darker parts, which we visit in certain spots. An important tip: don't repeat the same at every spot on the model. Some variation adds interest. That doesn't make any difference. Just make sure you remove as much paint as you can and work with thin colors. Of course, this technique takes some time. Prepare yourself to invest some hours of work. But by investing this work, you will learn a lot. Just keep going and it's going to turn out well at the end. When this step is done, your model is ready for further weathering steps. Here we are already applying the final color of the model. It's Vallejo 7947 red. We mix the AK colors, Vallejo colors and live colors without any restraint. On the right hand you see the piece of cloth which I used to remove the paint. For all parts of the model, we use the same of red colored rust tones. We always start dark and work up to the highlights. Just choose yourself how far you will go. Now we are going to apply the hairspray technique. The first step is to seal your whole model using a satin varnish. When this layer has dried, we apply the hairspray on top of it. This layer has to dry as well, but it won't take long. On top of that layer, we apply the actual color we like to use. In this case, we mix 80% water with 20% paint. After that, we can start to remove the paint using a wetted brush or other tools. With time, the paint comes off and reveals the underlying layer. this is the result. Just compare the completed piece before and after applying this technique. We repeat this technique on all parts of the model. First, seal with a layer of satin varnish, then add hairspray. On top of that, add a layer of your color of choice and remove it afterwards with wetted brush or other tools. I stubbornly repeat this technique. In this case, I added white on top of the hairspray. But in this case, the white is not the last layer as before. There's a reason for that, which I'll explain shortly. It is important to test all your colors before applying it to the model. In this case, I tried water with IK yellow, an experiment that failed, as you can see shortly. First I put some water into the brush and then added the AK color. You can see the result of this experiment here. It's clogged everywhere. I repeated the same experiment with Tamiya XF3 and found out there is no problem mixing the color with water. I tried two variations of this technique. The first was applying rust paint, seal it, then adding hairspray, spray the white color, remove the paint, seal again, add another layer of hairspray, then the yellow paint, and remove the yellow paint again. My preferred method is a bit more effective. First I add the rust color, then the seal varnish, hairspray, white color, the yellow color on top. As you can see, I left out the step when I remove the white paint. Instead, I remove the yellow paint together with the white paint in one stroke. As we are working on a thicker layer of paint, you need more rigid tools to remove it, just like a toothbrush or an old hard brush. You need more time to achieve the desired result. You will see it shortly. It took me about 30 minutes to achieve this result. Working on the white parts of the model is a piece of cake. The white paint comes off much more easily and the process is sped up multiple times. Working the white paint just requires a few strokes of a stiff brush. You see how efficiently the paint wears off. During the process, there's some white residue left where I don't want them. So I take a dry brush and remove it carefully. I repeat the process on the wheels. I paint them white and add some yellow paint, and after that remove the yellow paint as seen before. Just another tip. While masking your model, use as few sticking masking tape as possible. I like to produce my own tools. In this case, I used an old brush handle and added some bristles from a toothbrush. I glued them to the top of the handle using superglue. This tool allowed me to reach far smaller details. When painting the rubber parts of the wheels, I always make my own masking tools. Those tools cover the rim, so I can airbrush them beforehand and cover them up before I paint the rubber parts. That saves me some time. This concludes the first part. We can now step over to the weathering itself. The first step of this is the inlining, which follows next. This is the result of the first layer of the pin wash. I use AK fuel stains and engine oil to achieve some spilling effects on the tank. And this is the result of just a few minutes of work. I used the clear parts from the kit, with one special exception. I use white glue to glue these parts. Other products will mostly leave a stain afterwards when they dry up. For the front window, I use microscopic cover glasses. Those have only thicknesses between 0.1 and 0.2 millimeters. I applied some transparent scotch tape to the piece and rounded the edges using coarse sanding paper. The final step is to polish the glass using car polish compound. Again, use white glue to hold it in place. The reason for using duct tape is that we can easily add scratches and damage to the glass without shattering the whole piece. After the first layer of pin washing has dried, you start to see the level of contrast. I always start the pin washing and blending process with Van Dyke Brown. After that, I define the lightest highlights with permanent green yellow and the darkest shadow with lamp black. After this layer has dried, we can re-evaluate the level of contrast and start thinking over what colors to add for even more variations. In order to add variations, we can use any color lighter than red, like orange and yellow, for the highlights, and green tones for the shadows. Dark greens are useful for hooks and crannies and the darkest shadows. Just don't be shy. Use any color you like. You will be surprised what effects you can achieve with unexpected colors. On the rubber parts of the wheels, I always start with a pin wash consisting of buff titanium and white spirit. Keep this layer thin to avoid unnecessary buildup of paint. Let it dry thoroughly. When the pin wash has dried, you will see that there's not much left. That's okay, because we start subtle. I want to depict a vehicle that has not moved in many years. So there's an accumulation of dust and sand on the wheels. As I have no idea how to achieve this effect, I will start to experiment a bit. Applying the sponge technique like before, I use the following colors from top to bottom. Here you can see the result. The left side is done so far. This is how it looks after all the sun colors are applied. Stay calm, we'll work over that. When we start with the blacks, we need to concentrate on the exposed surfaces and stay away from the edges of the tire. This is the result. Experiment succeeded, if I may say so myself. Now I start to add some details like dust deposits and raindrop runners. Well, so far so good. Using acrylic colors, we correct some spots where we miss some rust details. As you can see, you're not stuck with one medium, just mix the various techniques. We always end with oil colors. Just let fly. There are no rules or regulations you need to follow. We attached the crane and added various tubing with soldering wire. These were attached using superglue and painted over in acrylic black. Afterwards they were worked over with copper oxide blue from Abteilung 502. An exposed vehicle always sports some degree of decay. We simulated rain and dust with Tamiya's XF4 green yellow diluted with 95% isopropanol. Lightly mist over the parts with an airbrush and remove the layer with a really old brush damped with isopropanol. We add some texture using Tamiya soil and grit effects. We mix both products in equal parts and add some static grass for additional texture. I restrain myself with this effect. That leaves me with the opportunity to add this model to a diorama if I choose to do so later. I add some light grid effects on the top parts of the previous layer in order to simulate a layer of dried mud. It is really important to work in small parts. Those soil effects are acrylic products and dry faster than you think. If you feel the need to correct some parts, which I promise you will, and need to remove some mud effects where you don't want them, use a brush with white spirit. That removes the pigment without mixing them. Water would not work. Using white spirit will prevent the pigments from being soaked up into your brush.